The Dak Empire's flagship, Celestial Dominion, hovered at the edge of Earth's solar system, its metallic hull gleaming under the distant sun. Admiral Tahoe stood before the massive view screen, his six-fingered hands clasped behind his back. The blue-green planet rotated slowly in the display, seemingly peaceful and unaware of the armada gathering at its doorstep. "Primitive," Tahoe muttered, examining the sensor readings. "They've barely reached their own moon. Their communications are chaotic and unencrypted. Their weapons are chemical-based projectiles and crude nuclear devices." Commander Jiwoo approached, her scaled skin reflecting the blue light of the command center. "We've completed our analysis, Admiral. They call themselves humans. Their military capabilities are at least 4 centuries behind ours. Their governments are fragmented. They will make an excellent addition to the Empire." Tahoe nodded. The Dak had conquered 17 star systems, using the same approach. First came the demonstration of power, quick strikes to destroy military installations and government centers. Then the surrender, then integration into the Empire as a resource world. "Proceed with standard pacification protocol," Tahoe ordered. "Target their largest military installations and government centers. Avoid excessive civilian casualties. We need workers for the mines." Jiwoo bowed. "It will be done, Admiral. The strike force is ready." 50 Dak warships entered Earth's atmosphere simultaneously, their stealth fields making them invisible to human detection systems. The ships positioned themselves above major cities and military bases across the planet. "Begin the strikes," Jiwoo commanded from her battlecruiser. Purple energy beams sliced through clouds, striking Pentagon, Kremlin, and other military headquarters worldwide. The Dak expected chaos, surrender communications, and masses fleeing in terror. What happened next defied their understanding of warfare. Within 20 minutes of the initial strikes, Earth's military forces were responding. Fighter jets scrambled from hidden bases. Anti-aircraft missiles launched from mobile platforms. Several Dak ships reported taking damage. "Impossible," Jiwoo hissed, watching as one of her destroyers lost altitude over a city humans called Seoul. "How are they organizing a response so quickly?" On the Celestial Dominion, Admiral Tahoe received increasingly disturbing reports. 3 Dak ships had been shot down. Human communications remained active, despite the destruction of their main command centers. Their internet, a primitive global information network, was buzzing with tactical information sharing. "They're using civilian communication channels for military coordination," a communications officer reported with disbelief. "They're adapting in real time." Tahoe leaned forward. "Show me the downed ships." The display shifted to satellite imagery of a Dak destroyer crashed in a desert. Human military vehicles surrounded it. Soldiers in protective gear were already cutting into the hull. "They're salvaging our technology," Tahoe whispered. "How can they work so fast?" The next report came from orbit. Human space stations were launching what appeared to be hastily armed maintenance vehicles. These improvised fighters were attacking Dak support ships. "Admiral, we're detecting nuclear launches," a sensor operator called out. Multiple intercontinental ballistic missiles rose from submarine platforms scattered across Earth's oceans, launch sites the Dak hadn't even detected in their survey. The missiles weren't aimed at population centers, but at precise points in low orbit, where Dak reinforcement ships were gathering. "Evasive maneuvers," Tahoe ordered, but 3 supply ships were destroyed before they could react. Commander Jiwoo's face appeared on the command screen, her usually composed features showing stress. "Admiral, we've lost 15 ships. The humans are counter-attacking on multiple fronts. They're using tactics we've never encountered." "What tactics?" Tahoe demanded. "They're sacrificing themselves," Jiwoo replied, visibly disturbed. "Their pilots are deliberately crashing into our ships when their weapons fail. Ground forces are charging our landing parties despite being outgunned, and they're learning our technology at an alarming rate. They've already turned 2 of our own energy weapons against us." Tahoe felt something he hadn't experienced in decades of conquest: uncertainty. "Pull back to orbit, regroup and prepare for a full assault." Before Jiwoo could acknowledge, a new signal cut through all Dak communications channels. A human face appeared on screen, an older male with stern features and a uniform decorated with medals. "I'm General Minho of Earth's United Defense Council," the human said in perfect DAC language. "Your attack has failed. Your technology is being dismantled as we speak. Your invasion force is scattered. You have two options: retreat immediately or face complete destruction." Taeho stared in shock. "How are you speaking our language? How did you access our secure channels?" The human's expression remained unchanged. "We learn quickly when threatened. We've already decrypted your communication protocols and translated your language database. Your ships that crashed have provided us with valuable insights into your technology." "This is impossible," Taeho said. "You are a primitive species." General Minho's eyes narrowed. "That was your first mistake. You should have studied us before. You attacked. Humans have one trait your species clearly lacks. We become most dangerous when cornered." As if to emphasize his point, 3 more DAC ships in orbit suddenly exploded. Hastily modified human space vehicles, now armed with salvaged DAC weapons, swarmed like angry insects. "You have 6 hours to leave our solar system," Minho continued. "After that, we will launch our counter-offensive, and unlike you, we won't show restraint." The transmission ended, leaving Admiral Taeho staring at the planet below. What had begun as a routine conquest had become something unprecedented in DAC history, a first contact gone catastrophically wrong. For the first time, the DAC Empire had picked a fight with a species that refused to follow the rules of defeat. "Order all ships to fall back to the rendezvous point," Taeho commanded quietly. "We need to reassess." As the Celestial Dominion turned away from Earth, Taeho realized with growing dread that they hadn't discovered a new subject world. They had awakened a sleeping predator. Science Director Do-hyun entered the War Council chamber, his steps unsteady. The circular room fell silent as the Empire's highest military officials turned toward him. Emperor Kangmin himself sat at the head of the obsidian table, his 4 eyes narrowing at the scientist's obvious distress. "Speak." "Director," the Emperor commanded, "explain how a pre-FTL civilization has destroyed 28 of our warships." Do-hyun placed a data crystal on the table. A holographic display erupted upward, showing anatomical scans of human bodies alongside combat footage from the failed Earth invasion. "Excellency, members of the Council," Do-hyun began, his voice steadier than his hands, "these humans are unlike any species we've encountered in our expansion. I've studied the biological samples retrieved from their planet, and their evolutionary history explains their response to our attack." The hologram shifted to show early humans chasing prey across vast grasslands. They evolved as persistence. "Hunters," Do-hyun continued. "While not the strongest or fastest predators, they would pursue prey for days, tracking and chasing until the target collapsed from exhaustion. This fundamental trait has shaped their psychology. They simply don't give up." Admiral Taeho, still reeling from his defeat at Earth, leaned forward. "Interesting biology lesson, Director, but how does this explain their military response? They should have been helpless against our technology." Do-hyun nodded to military. Strategist Ji-hoon, who stood from his seat, posture rigid with military discipline. "The humans are adapting our technology at an unprecedented rate," Ji-hoon said, changing the display to show a human fighter jet now fitted with a DAC energy weapon. "This image was captured 3 days after our retreat. They've already reverse-engineered our basic weapon systems. Our analysis suggests they're sharing technological discoveries globally, with scientists working around the clock in shifts." "Impossible," hissed General Kyung-ho, her scaled skin flushing red with anger. "No species could integrate our technology so quickly." "And yet they have," Ji-hoon replied, advancing the display again. "Their neural structure allows for extreme creative thinking and pattern recognition. They don't understand why our technology works yet, but they've figured out how to make it work." The Emperor's tail flicked with irritation. "This is concerning but not catastrophic. They're still confined to their solar system. We will simply gather a larger force and—" "They're not confined anymore," interrupted Captain Yunji, rising. From her seat at the far end of the table, the young naval officer activated her own data crystal, showing tracking data of multiple ships moving at faster-than-light speeds. "These vessels launched from Earth 2 days ago. They're crude adaptations of our scout ships that crashed during the retreat, but they're functional. Humans have achieved FTL travel. A stunned silence fell over the chamber. Where are they going? The Emperor finally asked. 3 neighboring systems, Yunji replied. The Proxima, Tau Ceti, and Trappist systems. All 3 contain planets we've catalogued as potential colony worlds. Intelligence Officer Sunwoo, who had remained silent until now, cleared his throat. There's more, Excellency. The humans aren't following any conventional warfare protocols. Our monitoring stations intercepted their communications. They're establishing contact with other species in those systems, species we considered too primitive to approach. The hologram changed to show a human delegation meeting with the insectoid inhabitants of Proxima b. The bugs were considered technologically promising, but still centuries from space travel. They're forming alliances, Sunwoo continued, offering technology and protection against us, and their approach is unexpected. They're sharing our weaknesses, the vulnerabilities they discovered during our brief conflict. Do-hyun stepped forward again. This is what makes humans truly dangerous. They don't just adapt technology, they adapt strategy. In the span of 2 weeks, they've gone from a planetary defense to an interstellar coalition against us. Military, strategist Ji-hoon added, their combat tactics are equally concerning. They use deception extensively. They hide strength to appear weak. They sacrifice individuals for strategic advantage. Our soldiers report humans continuing to fight despite injuries that would incapacitate our troops. On the display, footage showed a human soldier, badly wounded, pulling himself forward to place an explosive device on a DAC landing craft. The resulting explosion destroyed both the craft and the human. They fight like no species we've encountered before, Sunwoo summarized. They don't follow the rules of engagement that have governed interstellar conflict for millennia. The Emperor rose, his tall frame casting a shadow across the table. What are your recommendations? Do-hyun hesitated, then spoke. We must abandon standard conquest protocols. The humans have already proven they won't respond like our previous conquests. We either need to commit to their complete elimination, or, prompted the Emperor when Do-hyun paused, or we need to negotiate, establish boundaries. They appear willing to coexist with species that don't threaten them. The War Council erupted in heated debate. Admiral Taeho's voice rose above the others. Negotiate with pre-FTL savages? The Empire has never stooped to treating primitives as equals. They aren't primitives anymore, Captain Yunji responded, projecting a new image, a massive ship under construction in Earth orbit. Our scans indicate they're building what appears to be a dreadnought, using our technology, but improved upon. Their innovations are creative. They're taking approaches our engineers would never consider. As the Council argued, a communications officer burst into the chamber, breaking all protocol. Excellency, urgent news from the Proxima monitoring station. The Emperor gestured for silence. Speak. The station has been captured intact by human forces. They didn't destroy it. They boarded it. They've accessed our star maps, communication networks, and colony locations. The chamber fell deathly quiet. Science Director Do-hyun looked at the stunned faces around him. This is why they're dangerous, not because they're stronger or more advanced, but because they learn with unprecedented speed. They adapt. They persist. And now they know where we are vulnerable. The Emperor sank slowly back into his seat. Prepare the Imperial Armada, he ordered, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. All ships, all forces, we will crush this human threat before it spreads. As the council members departed to carry out the Emperor's orders, Do-hyun remained behind, studying the holographic image of a human, such an unassuming species, physically weaker than most spacefaring civilizations. Yet in their eyes he saw something the DAC had long forgotten, the primal hunger of a true predator. The DAC Empire had conquered 17 systems without serious resistance, but they had never before fought an enemy that refused to accept defeat as a possibility. They had never faced humans. The Imperial Armada assembled at the edge of the Proxima Centauri system, thousands of warships stretching across space like a metal constellation. At the center floated the Emperor's personal dreadnought, the Eternal Glory, a vessel larger than Earth's largest cities. Emperor Kangmin stood on the command deck, watching tactical displays with cold determination. All battle groups report. Ready, Excellency, Fleet Admiral Baekhyun announced, bowing low. 90,000 ships, over 2 million ground troops, and our newest quantum weapons, the largest force ever assembled in Imperial history. Kangmin nodded, his 4 eyes blinking. In sequence. The humans have spread too far, too fast. They must be eliminated before other subject worlds follow their example. Begin the advance. The armada moved forward, engines glowing blue against the blackness of space. Intelligence reports indicated that the humans had established their main forward base in the Proxima system, using the resources of the local insectoid species to build defenses. The DAC plan was simple. Overwhelm these defenses with superior numbers, push through to Earth and bombard the planet until resistance ended. What the DAC didn't expect was Admiral Hunwoo. From a command center buried beneath Proxima B's surface, the Earth officer studied the approaching armada with practiced calm. Around him, human and alien technicians worked at stations monitoring the Imperial advance. They're moving exactly as predicted, Hunwoo noted. Arrogance makes them predictable. A tall insectoid creature chittered next to him. The translator at its thorax converted the sounds to human language. Your plan seems impossible, Admiral. Their numbers are overwhelming. Hunwoo smiled. Numbers aren't everything, Queen Tekla. The DAC conquered your people because they follow rigid patterns. We've studied those patterns. He activated the communication system. All ships execute Operation Hornet's Nest. Civilian transports begin your runs. Throughout the system, hundreds of unarmed human transport ships suddenly broke from hiding places in asteroid fields and behind moons. They flew directly toward the Imperial Armada in seemingly suicidal courses. On the Eternal Glory, Emperor Kangmin watched with confusion. What are they doing? Those aren't warships. They appear to be civilian vessels, Excellency, Baekhyun replied. Unarmed. Perhaps they're fleeing the system? Directly at our fleet? Nonsense. Kangmin's eyes narrowed. It's a distraction. Ignore them and continue the advance. Focus weapons on their military vessels. The massive DAC battleships continued forward, ignoring the seemingly harmless transports that weaved between them. This was their critical mistake. As the civilian ships passed through the DAC formation, they ejected thousands of tiny objects. Each object was barely larger than a human hand, a simple drone carrying a powerful electromagnetic pulse generator. The drones attached to DAC ship hulls and activated simultaneously. 1/3 of the Imperial fleet suddenly went dark, their advanced systems overloaded by the primitive but effective EMP weapons. Now, Hunwoo ordered through the comm system. From behind Proxima B's moon emerged the real human fleet. While smaller than the Imperial Armada, every ship incorporated stolen and improved DAC technology. Leading the charge were vessels of unfamiliar design, contributions from 7 different species previously conquered by the DAC, now allied with humanity. The battle erupted across the system. Disabled DAC ships drifted helplessly as human vessels targeted their life support and propulsion systems. Those Imperial ships still functioning found themselves facing enemies who didn't fight according to any recognizable formation or tactics. They're using civilian mining lasers as weapons, a DAC officer shouted in disbelief, as a human cargo. Vessel cut through a cruiser's hull with industrial equipment never designed for combat. On a forward destroyer, Commander Jae-hyun watched in horror as human boarding parties breached his ship's hull. Unlike the methodical DAC approach to ship combat, the humans fought with desperate intensity, using makeshift weapons alongside stolen DAC technology. Fall back to level 3, Jae-hyun ordered his security teams. Seal all bulkheads. Through security cameras, he watched humans fighting their way forward, despite injuries that should have been incapacitating. One soldier, clearly suffering from radiation exposure after a shield breach, continued placing explosive charges on crucial systems before collapsing. Why don't they retreat when wounded? Jae-hyun asked his executive officer. They're not like us, the officer replied, voice shaking. Our scientists were right, they just don't stop. The battle raged for hours. Emperor Kangmin watched in growing horror as his perfect formation dissolved into chaos. The humans targeted command ships first, severing communication between battle groups. Then they focused on supply vessels, stranding combat ships without fuel or ammunition. But the most devastating aspect of the human strategy became clear when a massive DAC battleship suddenly fired upon its own allies. "What's happening?" Kangmin demanded. "They've hijacked the Indomitable," a communications officer reported. "Human teams boarded during the confusion and have taken control of its weapons systems." Throughout the battle zone, more DAC ships turned against their fleetmates as boarding parties seized control. The neat, organized Imperial formation collapsed entirely as vessels could no longer trust their allies. On the destroyer Righteous Fury, Commander Jae-hyun made a final transmission to the fleet before human forces breached his command deck. "Fall back immediately. These creatures are unlike anything in our experience. They don't fight for glory or conquest. They fight like cornered animals with nothing to lose. They're not like us. They never stop." Within hours, the unthinkable occurred. The Imperial Armada, the pride of the DAC Empire that had never known defeat in 17 conquests, broke formation and retreated. Over half the fleet was destroyed or captured. Emperor Kangmin's dreadnought, protected by sacrificial destroyer escorts, barely escaped the system. In the aftermath, Admiral Hyunwoo stood amidst the celebration in the command center. Human soldiers embraced their insectoid allies. Medical teams treated the wounded of all species. Queen Tekla approached the admiral, her compound eyes reflecting the tactical displays showing the retreating Imperial forces. "You knew they would underestimate you," she observed. Hyunwoo nodded. "That's always been humanity's advantage. We look weak until we're pushed too far." He turned to a communications officer. "Prepare a message to Earth Command. The defensive phase is complete." "What comes next?" asked the alien queen. Admiral Hyunwoo's expression hardened as he watched the enemy ships flee. "Now we take the fight." To them, the DAC need to understand they didn't just attack a planet. They attacked a species that has spent its entire history preparing for this moment without even knowing it. Across the system, human ships began salvaging DAC technology from disabled vessels, already adapting it, improving it. The Empire had meant to crush humanity once and for all. Instead, they had only awakened it. The DAC colony world of Novan. Prime had never seen battle. For generations, it had served as a peaceful agricultural center, supplying food to core Imperial worlds. Its defensive systems were minimal, its military presence token at best. The colonists had no reason to fear. No enemy had ever penetrated this deep into Imperial territory. Until now, the human fleet emerged from hyperspace without warning. 30 vessels of mixed design, some clearly modified DAC ships, others of completely new construction, incorporating technology from various species. They moved with precision that spoke of careful planning, surrounding orbital stations before defenders could react. On the command deck of the Earth vessel Retribution, Admiral Hyunwoo watched the planet grow larger on the view screen. "Begin the operation. Remember our protocols. Civilian targets are off limits. We're here for the military installation and communication hub only." Smaller craft launched from the fleet, racing toward the surface. Among them was the stealth dropship Shadowfall, carrying Captain Junho and his Special Forces team. Their mission was critical: infiltrate the Planetary Defense Center and secure its data cores before the DAC could destroy them. "Final approach," the pilot announced as the dropship sliced through Novan's atmosphere. "Defense systems remain inactive. They haven't spotted us." Captain Junho checked his equipment one last time. His squad of 12 had trained extensively for this mission, using simulators based on captured DAC facility layouts. Each soldier carried weapons and gear that would have been science fiction mere months ago: adaptive camouflage suits, energy weapons modified for human use, and translation devices to understand DAC communications. "Remember," Junho told his Tauntachiles, "we need those command codes intact. Move fast, strike hard, but preserve the central computers." The dropship touched down in a forest clearing 3 kilometers from the target. Within seconds, the team deployed, moving through alien vegetation with practiced stealth. Their path took them past DAC agricultural facilities, where confused workers watched overhead as human warships engaged the few defensive platforms in orbit. "They really didn't expect us to get this far," whispered Lieutenant Quan, Junho's second in command. "Look at their faces. Pure shock." Junho nodded but kept moving. The mission clock was ticking. At the Planetary Defense Headquarters, chaos reigned. Commander Taijo had been enjoying his morning meal when alarms blared throughout the facility. Now he stared at sensor readings that should have been impossible. "How did they find us? How did they get past the border defenses?" he demanded, scales flushing purple with stress. "Unknown, sir," a young officer replied. "We've lost contact with orbital stations 1 through 4. Ground-based defenses are coming online, but—" An explosion rocked the building, cutting off. The officer's report. The lights flickered and emergency systems activated. "We're being boarded," someone shouted. Commander Taijo reached for the data core destruct controls. Better to lose the information than let it fall into enemy hands. Before he could activate the sequence, the command center doors slid open and small cylindrical objects rolled inside. "Down!" Taijo shouted, but too late. The stun grenades detonated, filling the room with blinding light and disorienting sound. Human soldiers poured through the doorway, moving with shocking speed. Unlike the methodical DAC approach to room clearing, these creatures seemed to flow. Like water, covering angles, neutralizing threats, securing positions, all with minimal communication. Captain Junho entered last, heading straight for the main terminal. "Secure the commander," he ordered, pointing at the dazed Taijo. "I need this system operational in 3 minutes." While his team bound the DAC personnel with restraints, Junho connected a device to the main computer. Lines of alien code flashed. Across his helmet display as translation software converted DAC programming language to something he could understand. "Download commencing," he reported into his comm. "Admiral, we've secured the facility. Minimal resistance." "Aboard the Retribution," Admiral Hyunwoo acknowledged. "Good work, Captain. Extract what you can and prepare for evacuation. Phase 2 begins in 20 minutes. In the command center, Commander Taijo was regaining his senses. He watched in disbelief as the humans efficiently downloaded sensitive Imperial data. "You won't get away with this," he hissed. "The Empire will hunt you to extinction." Captain Junho glanced at him, then removed his helmet to look the alien commander in the eyes. "That threat might work on other species you've conquered, but humans have heard such threats throughout our history, from each other mostly." The casual way the human spoke chilled Taiho. There was no hatred in his voice, just calm determination. The data extraction completed, and Junho signaled his team to prepare for departure. As they readied to leave, Taiho noticed something odd. The humans weren't destroying the facility. They weren't even taking the Dark soldiers as prisoners. "Why aren't you killing us?" he asked, genuinely confused. Junho paused at the doorway. "That's not our mission. We came for information, not lives. But you're at war with us. We would eliminate enemy combatants." "That's the difference between us," Junho replied. "We are capable of total destruction, but we choose when to use it. We're not mindless killers." As the human team departed, Commander Taijo was left with his bound officers and a disturbing realization. These creatures were more complex than Imperial intelligence had suggested. 2 days later, on the Imperial capital world, intelligence, Officer Minky stood nervously before Emperor Kangmin. The massive throne room felt unusually cold as he delivered his report. "The humans have penetrated 6 core systems, Excellency. They've bypassed heavily defended worlds to strike at communication, hubs and intelligence centers. They're gathering information, fleet movements, defense codes, supply routes." The Emperor's 4 eyes blinked slowly. "And the Special Forces team you captured?" Minky hesitated. "We underestimated them, Excellency. They allowed themselves to be captured." "Allowed?" The Emperor leaned forward. "Yes, they wanted to deliver a message directly. We have the interrogation transcript." Minky handed over a data crystal. The recording showed a human male, Captain Junho, seated calmly in a detention cell. Despite restraints and isolation, he showed no signs of fear. "Explain your strategy," demanded the off-screen interrogator. "Why target information instead of planets?" The human smiled slightly. "Because we understand something you don't. Planets are just real estate. Information is power. We don't want your worlds. We want you to stop threatening ours." "You expect the Empire to surrender to primitives?" The interrogator's voice held disbelief. Your species fights until it becomes painful, Junho replied evenly. We fight until we win, regardless of cost. It's a fundamental difference in our thinking. Throughout human history, we've developed the concept of total war, committing every resource, every citizen, every aspect of our society toward victory. The human leaned forward, eyes intense. We don't want to destroy your civilization, but we will if we must. The choice is yours. The recording ended. Emperor Kangmin sat motionless on his throne. There's more, Excellency, Minky said quietly. The human prisoners escaped 6 hours after this recording. They left behind detailed plans showing exactly how they could have destroyed the entire facility, instead of merely escaping it. It was a demonstration. For the first time in his long reign, Emperor Kangmin felt something approaching fear. He had launched this war expecting an easy victory over primitives. Instead, he had awakened something that his empire had never encountered in 17 conquests, a species that viewed warfare not as a contest of honor or a path to glory, but as an existential struggle where survival itself was the only acceptable outcome. We must reconsider our approach, the Emperor said finally. These human, they are unlike any foe we have faced. The massive view screen in the Imperial Palace displayed a sight no Dak had ever imagined possible. Earth ships in orbit around the Imperial capital world of Dakari's Prime. Not attacking, not bombarding, simply waiting. Emperor Kangmin stared at the image, surrounded by his remaining advisors. The once grand War Council chamber felt empty, with half its seats vacant. Their occupants lost in battles across the stars. They have us surrounded on all sides, Fleet Admiral Baekhyun reported, his voice hollow. Our remaining forces are cut off from each other. They've disabled our communication relays rather than destroying them. They control our supply lines. And now this. The screen shifted to show a new image, the agricultural world of Timora. A Dak colony that had been directly in the path of the human advance. A world with minimal defenses and millions of civilian colonists. They bypassed it completely, Science Director Do-hyun said quietly. Their fleet split and went around, despite the tactical advantage taking it would have provided. They've done the same with every primarily civilian world. Emperor Kangmin's 4 eyes narrowed. They're demonstrating restraint. Why? A communication officer approached nervously. Excellency, the human flagship is hailing us again. Same message as before. Show me, Kangmin ordered. Admiral Hyunwoo's face appeared on screen. The human looked tired but determined. Emperor Kangmin, this is your final opportunity to prevent further bloodshed. We have no desire to destroy your civilization or harm your civilian populations. Our conflict is with your military aggression, not your people. I am authorized to accept your surrender and begin peace negotiations. The transmission ended, leaving the chamber in silence. We should fight to the last ship, General Kyung-ho hissed, scales flushing with anger. The Empire has never surrendered. The Empire has never faced extinction before, Do-hyun countered. Look at the data. They control our key systems. They've adapted our own technology and improved upon it. They've formed alliances with 7 of our former subject species, and most concerning, he paused, pulling up new images. They've developed these. The screen showed schematics of weapons unlike anything in the Dak arsenal. Planet killers, Baekhyun asked, voice barely audible. Yes, Do-hyun confirmed, based on our own terraforming technology, but weaponized. They could render Dakari's Prime uninhabitable within hours, yet they haven't deployed them. They're showing us they could destroy us utterly, but are choosing not to. Emperor Kangmin stood abruptly. Prepare my personal vessel. I will meet with them. 3 hours later, on the neutral ground of an orbital station, Emperor Kangmin faced human Ambassador Jinho across a simple table. No elaborate protocols, no ceremonial guards, just 2 representatives of their civilizations. Your Admiral Hyunwoo is not handling the negotiations, Kangmin asked, surprised to see a civilian rather than the military leader who had defeated his forces. Ambassador Jinho smiled slightly. Humans separate our military and diplomatic functions. I am here because we're no longer interested in fighting, but in establishing peace. For the next 6 hours, they negotiated terms. The DAC expected harsh demands, crippling reparations, perhaps even the dismantling of their empire. Instead, the human terms were unexpected. The DAC would withdraw from all forcibly conquered worlds, but could maintain colonies on uninhabited planets. Their military would be reduced, but not eliminated. A coalition council would be established, where all spacefaring species, including the DAC, would have representation. Technology sharing would be mandatory for peaceful applications like medicine and environmental restoration. These terms are surprisingly lenient, Emperor Kangmin said finally. Jinho nodded. Because our goal was never conquest. It was security for ourselves and others. We believe in self-determination for all species. Even after we attacked your homeworld unprovoked. Especially then, Jinho replied. We fought to show we couldn't be conquered. Now we need to show we won't become conquerors ourselves. The surrender ceremony was broadcast across the 17 systems of the former DAC Empire. Emperor Kangmin, standing with dignity despite the circumstances, signed the peace accord while billions watched on view screens across countless worlds. The following months, the galaxy transformed. Former DAC subject species sent representatives to Earth for a historic gathering. The insectoid Clictar of Proxima b, the aquatic Numerians, the crystalline Vosh, species that had never communicated, now worked together under human guidance. On the steps of the newly established Galactic Cooperation Center in Geneva, Ambassador Jinho addressed representatives from 26 species. The doctrine of this federation is simple, she announced to the assembled delegates. Aggression will be met with overwhelming force, but peaceful cooperation will receive generous friendship. We remember who stood with us when we were alone and threatened. We remember who joined us later. And yes, we remember who opposed us. But that page in our shared history is turned now. Today, we move forward together. Throughout the former empire, DAC worlds adjusted to the new reality. Some welcomed it, especially younger generations who had questioned imperial expansion policies. Others resisted, forming pockets of insurgency that were dealt with firmly, but without the planet-wide retribution they feared. On Dakari's prime, historian Sungho accessed the Great Archive, his life's work documenting the rise of the DAC Empire. Now he had the solemn duty of recording its fall. As research for his final volume, he interviewed a captured human pilot whose ship had crashed during the final battles. What made you so different? Sungho asked the human. Our empire conquered 17 systems before encountering Earth. What made your species able to defeat us when others couldn't? The pilot considered the question carefully. Throughout our history, humans faced extinction-level threats, from nature, from each other. We nearly destroyed ourselves multiple times. Those experiences taught us something crucial. There is no acceptable level of loss when survival is at stake. But your technology was inferior, Sungho pressed. Your species hadn't even developed faster-than-light travel when we found you. Technology is just a tool, the pilot replied. What matters is the will to use it, to adapt it, to improve it against all odds. You fight wars to expand. We fight them to survive. That night, Sungho completed the final entry in the Imperial Chronicle. His words would be studied by DAC younglings for generations to come. The Empire fell not to a technologically superior foe, but to a species that refused the very concept of defeat. Humans weren't the strongest or most advanced species we encountered, but they possessed something our conquest-driven civilization had forgotten. The desperate determination that comes from fighting for one's home, one's family, one's very existence. Their greatest weapon wasn't their technology, it was their unbreakable resolve. In the end, perhaps their greatest victory was teaching us that true strength lies not in conquest, but in cooperation. The new federation they've established may well achieve more than our empire ever did, and perhaps in time we will find our place within it, not as conquerors, but as equals among the stars. As Sungho's words became part of the historical record, Earth ships patrolled alongside their former enemies, protecting trade routes and responding to distress calls from any world in need. The galaxy settled into an uneasy but strengthening peace with humanity at its center, not ruling but guiding. a species that had gone from planetary defense to galactic peacekeepers in less than a year. When asked how humans had accomplished so much so quickly, Ambassador Jinho often gave the same reply: because we had no choice. When pushed to the edge of extinction, you discover what you're truly capable of. The Dark Empire simply picked a fight with the wrong species. The end.